Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting of August 13, 2014.
I'm glad you didn't say no. But good luck.
Everybody hear me okay?
Okay.
Would the council members please introduce themselves?
Joel Janot, Moss Beach.
Chris Johnson, El Granada.
Dave Olson, El Granada.
Dan Haggerty.
Laura Stein.
Lisa Ketchum. And Erin Deinzer said she'd be a little late. Okay, the first item on our agenda is public comment. Anyone may speak up to 3 minutes on any topic not on the agenda. Bill Kehoe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Boyd, I'd like to encourage Midcoast Community Council to get a hold of the League of Women Voters and start trying to book a date for local elections and have the usual MCC forum. I know there's at least a couple out here. I don't think there's going to be one for the school board. The last I looked, I think there was only 3 candidates for 3 slots, but there is one for the fire board, of which I am a candidate, and there's also going to be the Harbor District, which covers us, and then there is the Hampton Bay City Council one, but that doesn't cover the unincorporated Midcoast. And I think those are the only ones I know of. Is that right? Okay. Anyway, I encourage you to, because I know a couple of years ago we had a hard time, especially with Hampton Bay having one at the same time. It was difficult to get them to give us a date.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Leonard Warren?
I'll have a look at my timer out.
Hi. No, I didn't actually. What? I just wanted to alert people that the Fire District and the Harbor District are in collusion with Brown Act violations up the wazoo, with the Harbor District trying to, below the radar, sell the large property next to the El Granada Post Office to the Fire District. And that's going to cause all kinds of problems to have the fire station on that site. For one thing, they want to build a drive-through fire station, and that will take out nearly all of the parking that people use to go to the post office. There's around a dozen spaces, and it'll take out all but the handicap space and maybe 2 of the other spaces. Basically causing a nightmare for people coming home from work at the end of the day to pick up their mail, and then traffic will be backed up, and then the fire engine will want to get out and won't be able to because of all the traffic. And so if you want to know one of my other objections to them building a new fire station on that site, just go down to the south end of Main Street and look at the Taco Bell on steroids there. And that's the kind of grandiose, overblown development this fire district, which has way too much money. They got $6 million socked away to replace the El Granada station and the Moss Beach station. And they're fixated on doing both of them on new sites so they can overbuild the buildings. So I suggest that anybody who shares my concern about that contact the fire board directors and or show up at their board meetings, and maybe the Midcoast Council could agendize this and request a representative of the fire district to be here. Thank you.
Anybody else have public comment? Okay. I would encourage people to move up closer. It just creates a friendlier atmosphere, I gotta say. So if that would just encourage you, there's seats up front, they're just as comfortable as the ones in the back. Okay, so moving on to our regular agenda, the only item we have here tonight is informational overview of the Big Wave North Parcel Alternative and the addendum to the 2010 Big Wave Environmental Impact Report. We'll have a presentation by Camille Lung, the county planner for this project, and hopefully the community will be informed about the project, how it has been revised, and the timeline for public review and project approvals. Camille?
Good evening. Thank you all for making it out. I actually gave the exact same presentation for the Planning Commission this morning, so you'll be getting everything that they reviewed. Just to give you a recap, I gave a presentation, then the applicant, Scott Holmes, gave a presentation. He was here just for a minute, but he had to leave. The Planning Commission took public comment. I have to say, there were only 3 speaker slips submitted, which is surprising. And then there was some deliberation. The meeting lasted until about 11:30 or so. The meeting was videotaped and will be posted to the county's Big Wave webpage, which is a link directly off of the county planning and building homepage. It's really easy to find. Scroll to the bottom and right there.
Can you get a disc sent to PCT so they can run it on the cable channel?
I'll look at that as a possible thing to do. I have to run that by Steve Monowitz. Okay. What channel is that?
On the site, channel 27.
Okay, channel 27. Okay. PC. Okay. So as you may know, the Planning Commission meeting was just an informational session. The county usually does an informational session upon the release of sort of a larger environmental document. We did that the first time around for the 2010 project, where we started the comment period and we held an informational session with the Planning Commission as an opportunity to introduce them to the project, collect any questions from the Planning Commission, as well as collect comment from the public. And then later that's followed by a second Planning Commission meeting where they're actually asked to make a decision on the requested permits. So the presentation I'm giving is really just an informational overview of the project as well as the secret document that was released. And feel free to stop me at any time and ask questions. I have to say that the presentation from start to finish, there were a few interruptions, it was about 40 minutes. So it's not a short presentation, but it gives sort of a broad overview of everything.
Camille, I'd just like to say that if the public wants to speak, they need to come to the microphone. So if this may get a little unwieldy if you want to take questions during your presentation. So
sure.
Usually we wait till the end, but if people here really object to that, we could work something out. Just saying, if you speak from your seat, you probably won't be picked up on the TV.
That's a good suggestion. So the purpose of the informational item was to update the Planning Commission from their approval of the project in 2010, the original project, to describe the revised project, to describe the determination made by the county as far as the appropriate CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act document, to describe the overall permitting process, to summarize the results of the addendum that was released, as well as to receive comment from the public as a part of the courtesy 30-day public comment period that was set by the Community Development Director, as the addendum actually is not required to be circulated. So these slides show an aerial of the 2 project parcels. The 2 outlined in yellow are the project parcels. The north parcel is the larger parcel to the north, and the south parcel is smaller to the south. It is bookended, I guess, by Pillow Ridge to the north and Princeton to the south, and the airport to the east, across the street. The zoning of the 2 parcels is M1, which is light manufacturing / design review for the northern larger parcel, and waterfront zoning for the southern parcel, as well as design review for that parcel as well. And then there's a strip of airport overlay over the frontage of both parcels along Airport Street. And then also along the drainage that separates the 2 parcels, there's a zoning of RMCC just along the wetland areas. These photos are from the street. They're actually from Google Earth, and the one on the left faces the southern parcel, and you can see one of the Princeton buildings in the background. And then the photo on the right shows the northern parcel. You'll see that they're sort of agricultural in use, and Pillar Ridge is the development you see in the background on the right. So as far as background on the county's processing of the Big Wave project, in 2010, the Planning Commission certified the 2010 Environmental Impact Report for the original project and approved the original project. In March, the planning commission approval was appealed to the board of supervisors. The board denied the appeal, resulting in the county's approval of the 2010 project. And then that decision by the board was appealed to the coastal commission. And in August 2012, the coastal commission found substantial issues with the project and sustained the appeal, resulting in the denial of the project in 2012. And then in October 2013, after the applicant had worked together with the coastal commission, worked together with Committee for Green Foothills, Granada Sanitary, Montero Water, those were the appellants of the county's approval of the project. They worked together during that time period with all of those partners, or not partners, but agencies, and came up with this North Parcel alternative, which is intended to address their concerns and also hopefully be a project that could be considered for approval of the Coastal Commission. I should also say that the project was deemed complete in May of this year. So this is the site plan for the 2010 project. The original project showed on the northern parcel 8 office park buildings, and on the southern parcel the wellness center buildings. So, as you may recall, the northern parcel contained 8 buildings for the office park. The front row were 2-story buildings, and the back row were 3-story buildings surrounded by parking. And on the southern parcel, there was a larger wellness center building with a portion extending out into the airport overlay, which did not contain residential uses. Residential uses in the building that's just behind the airport overlay, which is right behind that. There's a line that separates the building from the parking lot. And then also there's a smaller residential building just off to the side of that larger building. So that was the original layout. I don't know if you recall, but there was also an archaeological site westward of that larger wellness center building.
Could you point out the buildings that you're
Yeah, sure.
Do you have a laser pointer or anything?
I don't. That's okay. So these top 4 buildings were 2 stories. These were 3 stories. Those are office park buildings. The proposal had sort of a flexible mix based on demand of manufacturing, research and development, storage, and office, and similar to the current proposal. This site plan shows a larger wellness center building where there's a portion that extends out to the airport overlay, which would not contain residential uses, and residential uses in this larger section of the building. And then that's a breezeway building that's also residential.
Camille, I have a
And then
pointer.
this is archaeological.
I have a little pointer if you want to use it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's a $2 pointer, not $100.
All right, so I tried to fix this in my slide, but anyway, these polygons are still a little bit off. But this is the current proposal up for county review. It's called the North Parcel Alternative because the office park buildings are combined with the wellness center buildings on the northern parcel. It contains 4 wellness center buildings on the western end of the northern parcel. It's really as far from the airport as possible. As far from the airport overlay area as well. And then 5 office park buildings. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these buildings are about 3 stories. This one's maybe 2 stories, but they're all about the same height. Sorry, which one?
On the left.
So these are all wellness center buildings, these 4. These are on one parcel, it's a wellness center parcel, and these buildings each have their own, each building will be located on its own separate lot. There's also a common lot that's owned by the wellness center that will be maintained by the wellness center. And then on the southern parcel, there's just simply a boat storage lot and a little restroom building right there. It's about 120 square feet. So these are for boat parking, also some vehicle parking, and then this portion of parking is for public access parking as required by the local coastal program. A portion of the parking provided at the north parcel will also be for public access coastal parking required by the LCP. Okay, so the elevation for building 1 of the wellness centers here, it's a 1-story building. This was the building, just so you know, the closest building to airport. So that's kind of what you see. The materials used are wood, hardy plank siding, stucco, generally natural toned with marine accents. This was reviewed by the design review committee in July. Let's see, the floor plan of this building contains only recreational and fitness uses. It's not a non-residential building. It is approximately 26 feet high from slab to the top of the building. Building 2 of the wellness center is a residential building. This is a basic residential unit. The floor plan of the units, that we call they're not really called units, but for ease of discussing it, we'll call it a unit. It doesn't contain a kitchen, so it's not a real dwelling unit. But it's really just a common area and 2 bedrooms connected to that area. The units will be flexible. There will be some studios, possibly 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, based on the demand of the developmentally disabled tenants. However, the total capacity will not exceed 50 developmentally disabled adults, 20 staff, and will not exceed 57 bedrooms. So while it's flexible, there is a limit. On the first floor, there will be no residential uses. These are below the tsunami inundation level, so they can only contain sort of non-habitable uses. In this instance, it'll either be storage or a pool. And then on the top floor, there will be residential uses. And this height from slab is 22 feet. Building 3 is similar to building 2. It's 2 stories. The only difference really is that the basement floor, which is above ground, which is called a basement because it's uninhabitable, will contain a 200,000 gallon water tank for fire flow. And that will not require any additional grading because, anyway, Scott can explain that a little further. Let's see. Building 4 is actually a 3-story residential building on floors 2 and 3. Floor 1 will contain, the basement level, will contain a theater, dining uses, sort of common uses for the wellness center. These are elevations of the office park buildings. There's 2 sort of prototypes of buildings. So there's the ACE prototype and there's the buildings B and D or something like that. Similar to the wellness center, they're using natural materials, hardy plank, stucco. They're using marine accents. The floor plan will be based on tenant demand. So it's really just a cold shell at this point. As we pointed out at the design review committee, the design here is a bit of a prototype because depending on whether the tenant is an office use or a manufacturing use, there may or may not be rolled doors. The exact configuration of the windows and the rolled doors and the entrances will be determined based on the tenant. However, should the design vary significantly from what's presented or what's approved by the planning commission, then they would have to, if it's a major amendment, we'd have to go back and get that amended. However, if it's sort of in line with what's approved, then it could be approved as a minor amendment. So as far as project parking, on the north parcel, the project parking is 42 spaces for the wellness center, 420 for the office park, adding up to 462 project parking spaces on the north parcel. And if you take 20% of that, you'll end up with 92 spaces that's required by the LCP for coastal access public parking. Those 92 spaces are split between the north parcel and the south parcel, where 63 spaces will be on the north parcel and 29 spaces will be on the south parcel. The total parking provided, private plus public, is 554. As far as the proposed landscaping for the project, the things in circles are 24-inch box trees proposed for the parking lot landscaping. Then the polygons, the shaded polygons, are riparian, upland, meadow, willow landscaping that was proposed by an ecologist. Sorry, these areas right here, right along the wetland and the wetland buffers. And then outside of those buffers, these areas right here are proposed for organic gardening. So carrying on the current agricultural use of the parcel, or both parcels. The phasing plan is over 15 years, unlike the previous proposal, which was phased over 20 years, where construction would take place over 20 years in all the buildings. In this scenario would be only up to 15 years. And phasing in the first phase would include the wellness center buildings, the boat storage on the south parcel, coastal access parking on the south parcel. Over the first 5 years of phase one. Also, the landscape planting within the buffer area of the south parcel would also be achieved during that time. Then in phase two, which is years 5 to 8, these back buildings would be constructed for the office park. Phase 3 would see the construction of the front office park buildings. I should also note that building A would be owned by the wellness center, but it's essentially, either storage or possibly office use. It depends on the parking situation. I should describe the parking situation a little bit. The occupancy of the office park buildings is flexible, as you know. It could be office, which is more parking intense, or it could be storage, which is less parking intensive. So depending on the mix of tenants, you may see fewer office buildings built if all the parking is taken that. If all the parking is taken that, that's it. The county's not issuing any more building permits. However, I should say that, tenants come and go, and eventually, I'm guessing, there could be a mix of sort of light, parking intense uses, office, as well as a mix of non-parking intense uses, such that perhaps all the buildings will be built and yet all the parking accommodated. So the county will keep track as we approve the tenant improvements for each of the office buildings, where in terms of parking they're at, in terms of parking capacity. All right, so with each building will come the associated parking. Let's see here. For phase 3 and 4 is sort of the last two phases, is when the landscaping for the wetland and the wetland buffer areas will be completed. And this is in order to have sort of a stable idea of where the habitat is. If you put it in too soon, the habitat could grow and actually could shrink sort of the building envelope that was approved by the county. So landscaping is then sort of delayed to the end of that wetland buffer area. Let's see here. Basically just ran through that. This table outlines the differences, the major differences between the 2010 project approved by the county and the Big Wave North Parcel alternative. In terms of subdivision and the number of lots, there was 13 lots with the original proposal, 9 lots with the current proposal, where development was split between the two parcels, and in this case, development is concentrated on the north parcel. There was 8 buildings for office buildings under the previous proposal, and only 5 under the current proposal, with a significant reduction in the square footage, significant reduction in the building footprints. As far as the wellness center, there is a reduction in square footage, however, the capacity is basically remaining the same. Parking has been reduced as, commensurate with the reduction in the scale of the office park buildings. The height of the the maximum height of the buildings have reduced. Water service in 2010 was from an on-site well with wastewater recycling on-site and Coastside County Water District for emergency backup. The current proposal connects to Montero Water and Sanitary for both domestic water and fire flow, with the well only providing water for landscaping and agriculture on-site. As far as wastewater, the 2010 proposal included an on-site wastewater treatment with GSD as backup. The current proposal connects to Granada Sanitary for all treatment and disposal. Phasing goes from 20 years down to 15 years, as I mentioned. The setbacks have increased from the minimum of 100 feet back in 2010 to 150 feet and larger on the southern parcel where there's less development. All right. So in light of those project changes, the county hired TRA, environmental consultants, in order to provide an analysis of the North Parcel Alternative Project and to recommend the appropriate CEQA document for analyzing the environmental impacts of this sort of reduced project. Per the CEQA guidelines, section 15162A, it states that when an EIR has been certified for a project, no subsequent EIR shall be prepared for that project unless the lead agency determines that one or more of the following circumstances exist. Either proposed changes, new circumstances, new information would cause the project to result in new significant impacts or increased severity of previously identified impacts. So as far as project changes, most of the changes are all reduction, all of them perhaps. No new circumstances were identified. As far as new information, there was quite a bit. There was the certification of the LCP amendments. So there's new policies in our amended LCP that now apply to the project, which hadn't applied in 2010. There's the airport land use compatibility plan preparation. At this moment in time, actually there's a different slide that provides status of that, but currently the LUC plan is being reviewed by the Airport Land Use Committee, has not been adopted yet. They're actually, anyway, I'll describe that later. They're actually wavering between whether the NEGDAC prepared is adequate or whether they need to go to an EIR. So we can talk about that. There's the Princeton planning process, which is underway, as well as the county's adoption of the ECAP, which is the Energy Efficiency Climate Action Plan, which sets regulations for greenhouse gases, which the project is subject to. So based on all the consideration of that, the TRA helped the county to determine that an addendum to the certified EIR is the appropriate document to review the revised reduced project. So Kate Werner is our planner over there, and she drafted the addendum that was released on the 31st of July. The county also contracted, so the county contracted with TRA directly, I should mention. The county also contracted with Hexagon to prepare a updated traffic report for the reduced project. The county wanted to know how much the project traffic trips would be reduced from the original project. And we also contracted with Environmental Visions to prepare new visual simulations for the project, as the visual simulations in 2010 represented just a different configuration of buildings. So under the CEQA section that I stated, no circulation is required for an EIR addendum. But however, the county did actually circulate this document to just about everybody, I would say. And the director set a 30-day courtesy public review period just to give you all adequate opportunity to review the rather lengthy document, as well as provide comment, should you choose to, and to also provide the county time to respond to those comments prior to the tentative October 22nd Planning Commission hearing. So while you could comment, right at the October 22nd meeting, it may not provide the county adequate comprehensive response. I should actually state too that the director has determined that there won't, similar to an EIR, the addendum, I should say that, if you can recall back in 2010, there was a draft EIR, there was a comment period, there was comments collected, and then in the final EIR, there were your comment letters followed by an individual response to each comment letter, and that was published as a final EIR. In the case of an addendum, a response to comment is not required. However, the director determined that we are responding to comments, given adequate time. In either together with the staff report, most likely that, together with the staff report, hopefully released a little bit sooner than a staff report would to allow the public more time to review the response to comments. And they won't be responses to individual letters. They would be grouped by topical concerns and given a comprehensive response to that topic. Okay, so the addendum was noticed to the Coastal Commission, responsible agencies, Committee for Green Foothills, the Midcoast Community Council, Pillar Ridge, and other interested parties. Pillar Ridge was given a document, a hard copy of the addendum, as well as the MCC. There's 2 copies of this at the Halfmoon Bay Library, and it's also available online on the county's website.
There may be a copy in the GSD office.
I think that's the copy.
It is.
That's
It is
the
there.
MCC copy. Yeah, a GSD, yes. As far as notification goes, I also gave a presentation at the Airport Land Use Committee. It was a courtesy presentation that I gave to them, following up on a presentation I gave back in 2009. And then I'm also giving this presentation. Let's see here. So now I'm going to overview some of the impacts identified in the addendum. I'm sorry. As far as in the area of aesthetics, building heights were reduced from 51 to 38 feet. The number of buildings were reduced from 8 to 5 buildings, office buildings. The office park and wellness center buildings were now concentrated on the north parcel. On the south parcel, most of the land would remain undeveloped. Visual simulations were prepared that show the skyline views of Pillar Ridge from community vantage points were not interrupted by the project buildings. There were 5 viewpoints that were contracted to be looked at by Environmental Visions. The first viewpoint is from Airport Street right here, right at the corner of this little propane yard. Let's see, 2 was Highway 1 right at the airport. 3 was Highway 1 at Capistrano. 4 was the radio tower. And 5 was Pillar Point Bluff. So there's 5 of these, and the left slide will always show the existing view of the project parcels from that vantage point. The top right visual simulation will show the project at completion, and at the time of completion, right after they put the plants in the ground. And then the bottom slide will always show, we've contracted with Environmental Visions to show a 15-year time frame for when landscaping has matured, just to show you sort of the amount of screening that would be provided by the landscaping after 15 years. So from Airport Street, this is how we would look at project completion. You'd see the buildings right in the front there, and after 15 years, there would be quite a large amount of screening. It should be mentioned that at the Design Review Committee, their comment was to actually provide a smoother transition between the surrounding vegetation, which is very low-lying, as you know, and sort of raising the elevation of the landscaping as you move further into the parcel. So while the project buildings will still be screened, fully screened, the landscaping won't quite look like a wall of landscaping as it does in this simulation. let's see, I should also state that the Big Wave project is going back to the design review committee on September 11th. And the applicant has been asked to provide a cross-section drawing of how landscaping will sort of transition from the street into the parcel. So it'll give you guys, or the design review committee, a better idea of that landscaping. There's also some other changes that they had asked for, so the applicant's busy getting those documents together for that meeting. This vantage point is from Half Moon Bay Airport at Highway 1, and in the existing photo, you can see that you'll see intervening development at the airport. You'll see topography and the bridge there. You can see that the buildings are under the bridge. And after 15 years, they'll be better screened. This is the vantage point at Capistrano Road at Highway 1. You can see here that there's an open field through the airport. Let's see here. The project buildings have a background of vegetation, and they'll be better screened at 15 years. But they appear to be quite far from Highway 1. At Pillar Point Radio Tower, you'll see agricultural fields currently, topography. The buildings would be inset right in the fields there. The overall color scheme is earth-toned. They'll grow in, this is farming, and this is parking. So the parking will be a little bit better screened after 15 years. Pillar Point Bluff Trail, you'll see currently intervening development with the mobile home park. You'll see a bit of the beach right here, Princeton buildings here. The buildings would fit in right there, would not interview with ocean views. Be better screened after 15 years. As far as cultural resources, the archaeological resources on the southern parcel will continue to be protected under this north parcel alternative, and remain undeveloped. With regard to biology, the development footprint is reduced, wetland setbacks are increased from the original project, the wastewater system previously proposed is eliminated. The concern there originally was that the treated wastewater could have a potential impact to the drainage into the marsh. So that impact is eliminated. In the addendum, we provide a graphic of basically a new search through the CNDDB database, which is a database used to track new occurrences of protected species, plant and animal. There were new occurrences since 2009 of the San Francisco garter snake. It is quite far from the project parcels.
I think that's red-legged frog.
It says garter snake.
In 2013, red-legged frog found right over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. It is red-legged frog.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
red.
shown on,
Oh, and the garter snake says it's not shown. Okay, got it.
no, red-legged frog's been found right over here. Between here and the Big Wave parcel,
Oh, okay.
in the creek.
If you want to give me some
It's-
documentation
I
to that
document,
effect.
okay, sure.
Let's see. Geology and soils. Grading was 22,000 cubic yards of cut, 26,000 cubic yards of fill previously with the other 2010 project. Currently, the proposal is 735 cubic yards of cut and 21,000 cubic yards of gravel import, mostly to raise the existing grade up by, I would say, a maximum of 3 feet, and to allow for infiltration under the buildings. So the buildings are sitting on gravel and stormwater is being infiltrated under them. There was a fault trench study prepared since the 2010 approval. which found no evidence of fault traces on the project site. As far as tsunami hazard, the tsunami wave height per the CalEMA tsunami inundation map is 28 feet in GBD. The floor elevations of the residential units, which is not that basement level but the second floor, is 34 feet or higher. All residential units would be at least 2 feet above the inundation water levels, more than that, as required by the LCP and the county zoning regulations. As far as airport hazard and noise, this concern was brought up at the ALUC presentation, both in 2009 and just recently on July 31st, that perhaps there's a wind tunnel, could be a similar wind tunnel effect that is the case over at the San Carlos Airport. There's the Circle Star buildings, or is it not the Circle Star buildings? It's the, what buildings was it?
That's on the next slide.
It's on the next slide. Skyway Landing. Oh, sorry, this is talking about something else. That's the next slide, excuse me. I'll get to that. Okay, so the ALUCP is currently being drafted, as I had mentioned. In its current state, with the language that's currently in what they call the draft final, it applies the 1996, the current ALUCP, not the one being drafted, to all projects deemed complete. This project was deemed complete on May 29th. So under the 1996 ALUCP, a large portion of the project sites within the 55 to 60 dB CNEL contour range, where residential and business uses are compatible. Also, the project structures are located outside of the APZ zone that's identified under the current plan. The status, as I mentioned, is a bit tentative at the current moment. While Coastal Commission and the county support the retaining of that the deemed complete language, the Caltrans actually provided a comment letter stating that that language should be removed. So currently, we're working this out with Caltrans as far as what the final draft will say. We don't know. And as I mentioned, there was an ALUC, Airport Land Use Committee meeting on the 31st. The item was, CCAG wanted the item to move forward to CCAG from the ALUC with a recommendation of approval of the negative declaration that was prepared for the plan. However, they continue the item based on concerns that perhaps there needs to be an EIR. And the reason for that is because, just as a broad overview, there's a Moss Beach affordable housing site that the county has designated as affordable housing, where housing would largely be eliminated due to the new safety zones of the draft being prepared at the LUCP. So that is a significant impact that may warrant an EIR preparation. So as far as, the timing of the Big Wave project decision versus the ALUCP adoption, it's anyone's guess, I guess.
Camille?
Yes.
What was the reason that Caltrans asked for the complete language to be removed?
I'm not actually sure. Summer Burleson would know sort of the detail of that. She's working with CCAG on the Plan Princeton planning process, and so she's intimately familiar with all of the comments.
I can get you the letter. Okay.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned, there was a concern at the ALUC meeting that the westward wind flows here are similar perhaps to the ones at St. Carlos Airport, causing a wind tunnel effect over there. And I should state that this is not covered in the addendum. This is covered, however, in the 2010 EIR, and the draft EIR, as well as in the final EIR, which states that the topography, which determines wind flows, is quite dissimilar from the San Carlos site with Pillar Ridge. Specifically, it states that the potential for a project-related wind tunnel is anticipated to be low due to the terrain of the project site. Pillar Ridge Mountain is currently blocked prevailing winds from the west and would prevent a wind tunnel effect. In the FEIR, it states that as the Pillar Ridge Mountains are located west of the project site and currently block winds to the site, any tunnel effect would be minimal at this location. With regard to noise, the Wellness Center has been moved further west from the airport, further away from the airport. Sound insulation and noise deflection would still be provided via landscaping similar to the past project. An aggregation easement is still required as a mitigation measure where the property owner, Big Wave, would acknowledge the location of the wellness center next to the airport, acknowledge the noises and operational situation at the airport, and any residents who can't accept the noise would accept to be relocated as agreed to in the lease agreements.
Would there be soundproof windows like they put over near SFO?
I'd imagine.
Yeah, we're going either double or triple pane. We have, there are commercial buildings between the residential and the airport too, I think. Phil might have mentioned that. So.
Yeah. Let's see. So as far as other project noise, construction noise, noise from mechanical equipment, it won't be located on the rooftops actually. And project vehicle noise from traffic, those will all be reduced based on the reduction in the project scale. As far as traffic is concerned, there is a new traffic report based on the revised project. They studied 11 intersections. Based on the reduction of square footage of the office space, there'll be 644 fewer project trips. This table's hard to see, but these were the 11 intersections studied. There were intersections at Main and Cabrillo, 92 and Main, Capistrano intersections, Main intersections through Princeton, Airport Street, as well as all the way up to Cypress. All these intersections were studied.
When?
May,
Currently, it's
May 2014.
April Fool's Day and May 7th.
No, there was a weekday in May, and then on Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, they did it again.
That's it. Yeah, it was Memorial Day weekend. They went out for to take counts for both weekday traffic and weekend traffic. Sorry? I'll go through. Okay. So as far as weekday traffic, they studied existing conditions, existing plus project, background plus project, and cumulative project conditions. They found that all the study intersections, except for the intersection of Highway 1 and Cypress, would operate at an LOS, level of service, of C or better under all conditions except the cumulative conditions. Cumulative, just to explain it further, includes existing conditions, all the stuff that generates traffic now, any approved projects, the current project, and any pending projects. So I had to give the traffic consultant a list of projects in Princeton that are currently under review.
But this God has to be followed every,
Yes.
public has to.
They took counts on Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, but the tunnel opened when?
Far before then. Far before then.
The traffic counts were done just this past May, so they take into, this is very current.
It's very good. Yes. Yes.
There was, yes, Saturday midday, Memorial Day weekend to test that, and then also AM and PM on a weekday.
Okay. So.
You talked about Cypress, is that what?
But can she, let her finish
I'll
her
get there, I'll get there.
presentation and then.
Okay. All right, so under cumulative conditions, 8 of the 11 intersections would operate at a level of LOSC or better. However, for these 3 intersections, there were significant impacts identified. At Highway 1 and Capistrano Road North, it would operate at an acceptable level of service in the AM, but in the PM, it would go to LOSE. However, the project does not add any traffic to this movement, is what the report found. At Highway 1 and Main Street, the intersection would operate at an LOSE in the PM, both with no project, under a no project scenario, as well as with project conditions. The project would add a 2-second delay at this intersection, which is not determined to be significant, as there is a 4 or more second threshold of significance. At Highway 1 in Cypress, the project would result in an unacceptable LOS F in both AM and PM peak hours. So in the traffic report, as you'll see in the addendum, there is a recommendation for mitigation of either signalization or a roundabout. A roundabout is actually required to be looked at under Caltrans regulations prior to going to an intersection option, signal option. So they have to rule out a roundabout first. And as you recall in the Midcoast mobility study, there's also a recommendation for a roundabout at this intersection. However, the language is rather broad to also allow for any other options outside of a signal and a roundabout that Caltrans finds appropriate for this intersection.
And how would that be paid for? Would Caltrans pay for it?
The improvements would be funded by the applicant. And I can read the mitigation measure word for word if you like it, but it's in the addendum. They would have to do a traffic report right at, prior to the issuance of the first building permit and at the issuance of every building permit for every subsequent building. In which case they would have to follow the recommendations of that traffic report and mitigations once the signal warrant is met. If the signal warrant is not met, they won't be constructing mitigation. It's actually not.
How does that work? I don't understand.
So there's certain amount of project traffic that would trigger a signal, that would warrant a signal.
Which we've already met.
So
We've already
there's,
exceeded that, right?
no, the signal warrants have not been met currently.
Well, I thought you said we rated it an F.
Under current project conditions, yes, but there's specific signal warrants, and perhaps I can get a little more specificity from Hexagon. But the signal warrants specifically in the report, it says they have not been met at this intersection. And when the project traffic gets to a point after construction of building 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe under building 1, the signal warrants wouldn't be met, especially with a less parking, less traffic intense use. Yes. I can give you an answer for that later once but the signal warrants have not been met is what the report says.
What is signal warrants?
What,
Meeting
Can we let Camille finish her presentation and then we'll move on to questions, please?
Thank you. Okay, so under this this table shows weekend traffic, and I'll discuss that in the next slide. Saturday traffic. Midday peak hour intersection level service was analyzed for only the 6 intersections along the state highways. Most of the study intersections would operate at a level of LOSC or better under all conditions. However, the intersection of Highway 1 and Capistrano Road North, the eastbound left turn movement would operate at LOSE under existing and existing plus project conditions. The project would not add any trips to this movement, is what it found. And then at the intersection of Highway 1 and Cypress Avenue, the eastbound to northbound left turn movement would operate at LOSF under these project conditions, and this does constitute significant impact and would be addressed by the mitigation measure for signalization or a roundabout at that intersection. So in terms of utility and service systems, the project would have the water demand has been reduced from 26,000 GPD to 9,700 under the current proposal.
Explain how that's possible. It's still 90% of the original project.
Scott can explain that in more detail. So save your questions till the end. Let's see, the on-site well use for domestic water has been eliminated. The project will connect to MWSD. There is the project includes a proposal for an 8-inch water main that would be extended from Airport Road at Pillar Ridge Mobile Home Park. That would be extended to the project site for domestic and fire water service. For wastewater, it's a similar reduction. There was previously an on-site wastewater treatment and wastewater recycling system proposed. The project would connect to GSD for wastewater. The current proposal includes an 8-inch gravity sanitary sewer main line that would run from a manhole at Airport Street and Stanford to the northern limit of the north. This is the utility plan. Scott can further elaborate if needed. This shows the fire flow system. The fire flow system is a package of different things that meet the fire flow. The first thing is the buildings will be class 1 rated. They're cement buildings. There will be a 200,000 gallon water tank in the basement of building 3 of the wellness center. There will be booster pumps and a generator on site. There will be looping of the fire water line around the site for added pressure. And there is the current hydrant system along Airport Street where water will be provided by Montero Water. So it's sort of a package of solutions, I guess.
Excuse me, Camille,
Yes.
could I politely ask you to use the term proposed, not that there will be,
Okay.
proposed?
Proposed, yes.
By you using the word will be, meaning, it's going to
I
happen.
guess I mean would be.
Well, you're saying will be, and
I
it's
guess
just,
I mean would be. Sorry.
could you use proposed?
Yes.
Better,
I
thank
mean,
you.
under the proposal, there would be.
That's
there will be
sounds
that.
much better, thank you.
Ish.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I could also be a little tired because this is the second time I'm providing this.
I understand. Long day.
And my voice is about to give out. Under the permitting process going forward included the Planning Commission informational session this morning, the MCC meeting this evening. There will be an upcoming September 11th Design Review Committee meeting, a continuation of their review from July. Also, a tentative date for the actual decision of the requested permits. The requested actions are approval of the addendum, a proposed use permit for the modern sanitarium of the Wellness Center, and the outdoor boat storage use on the southern parcel, associated parking that's located within the airport overlay strip would require a use permit. The proposed major subdivision of the north parcel, minor subdivision of the south parcel, coastal development permits for construction and grading, as well as everything else that's needed for the project. The design review permit from which the CDRC would be providing a recommendation to the Planning Commission. A grading permit for the proposed grading, and also the Planning Commission's recommendation regarding the execution of the development agreement. That will be provided to the public and to the Planning Commission well in advance for their review. But currently the draft is not available, but should be soon. So, as I had presented at the Planning Commission, we took public comment. There was about 3 speaker slips. And that concludes my presentation.
Scott, did you have something to add to that?
Oh, do I? Just a few things, not a lot. I'll try to make it quick. I could answer a couple of questions too that came up, like the, and I probably should, talking to the mic.
The way I'd like to do this, when you finish your presentation, the council will ask questions, then we'll have the public comment open, and they can come up and ask, and then we'll bring it back to the council.
Just real quickly on the traffic warrants, Caltrans has a method of calculating that, and that intersection's quite close. The traffic report actually estimates what the traffic is, but Caltrans will go on to exact counts. And to give you a kind of an idea of scale, we could probably, most of our residents don't drive, we could probably squeeze in a 10 or 20 unit, one of building 1 or 2 on the Wellness Center. But you couldn't put any kind of business space in, and it's doubtful you could even put in a computer storage space in. It's that close. So any kind of development, complete Wellness Center would trigger the warrants for a roundabout or an intersection, or any business building itself would trigger that. And the way the mitigation's written, it occurs at the building permit phase prior to the construction. And I was going to kind of go over a couple of things. One is, I could That's my wife and daughter, but I'm involved in this project because I've been working with the special needs community on the coast side for 20 years. We established CPALs, and that's the only reason I'm involved with it. People kind of wonder, could the building go somewhere else? And we're not a wealthy organization, and most of the people that we represent are extremely low income. And the owners of the property, well, Jeff Peck, he has a daughter that's also part of our organization. Steve Barber has a son that is similar. So they've, since pretty close to inception, they've looked at housing. I've been involved since 2004 or 5, and they donated 5 acres to us. So we have land that we own that is developable. They're probably going to have to donate another 3 acres. So we're going to end up owning about half of the site out there. Again, my background is I'm a civil engineer. I've been doing coastal projects for 25 years and worked with the coastal permit process quite a bit. Restoration-wise is one of my specialties. We did, I made a few mistakes in that, but Clara Creek was a red-legged frog habitat. We went from 3 frogs to over 10,000. We have the same designers that are doing the riparian design that I've worked with for about 20 years. And San Pedro was steelhead. We went from a few to a couple of thousand. The beach dune restoration actually was a tsunami thing in Lindemar. You can see that it's restored and looks very nice. One of the things I like is being able to mix environmental restoration with something that meets a public need. And I think this project actually does that. Camille covered this, but the main reason we're back here is in the Coastal Commission meeting in 2012, they supported the appeal of the project. And in that process, I went through all of the issues in the meetings, all the written stuff that they had, and came up with a list, working mostly with the Committee for Green Foothills, that addressed specifically the Coastal Commission issues. And we still meet the goals of our project. And primarily for the Wellness Center, it's housing for our children when we're too old to take care of them, which I'm getting awfully close at this point. And we're still looking at the business park to provide jobs and financial contributions. They're going to have a square foot payment and a number of other things. And the one thing that I wanted to kind of dispel is the business park's only going to be built based on need. We're not going to build it as spec. There's if no one needs it, it won't get built, and it'll create some financial problems for the Wellness Center. It won't make it unfeasible, but we're going to have to look at other sources of revenue, because our goal is to keep it for extremely low income. And it's not, it's what it is, and it's currently feasible in that area. And we could go over this, but I kind of broke down the commission's thing in basically 8 areas. They wanted increased habitat protection, increased open space, and they wanted, the Princeton development is Zone W for waterfront. They didn't want to have any residential in that, and we're a special use permit required residential. That's another concern people have. Our use permit allows only housing for special needs individuals. It won't allow general housing. If the project is unsuccessful, you can't convert that into, condominiums or something else. It has to stay. It needs a new use permit. Plus, whatever development goes on that site, if it's developed, it's limited to parking spaces of 420 for any kind of commercial and 42 for any kind of residential. Specifically for housing for special needs folks. And Camille kind of showed this, but I wanted to tell you how we got to the NPA project. We eliminated those 2 buildings and these 2 buildings. That's 4 buildings from the office park site. And the new buildings are slightly larger, and then we transferred all of the facilities from over here to over up in this corner. And we picked that corner for a couple of reasons. We're outside of the current and any future airport overlay issues or safety zones. And this site over here, it had 20,000 square feet of commercial. That building's been moved over to this building. I'll show you on the next film. We can go back and forth if that makes any difference, but you've seen this with Camille. This building is currently proposed to be owned by the Wellness Center. It's 27,000 square feet now. It was 20 at this side, but the overall Wellness Center is the same size, including that building, about 97,000 square feet, including 27,000 of that. The remaining office buildings that are owned by the private group are clustered in these four, and they're 162,000 square feet. So we reduced what was on the north parcel to 162,000 square feet, and it's the same footprint, by the way. The business park that's owned privately is the same size, footprint-wise, slightly smaller than what our Wellness Center is, what the nonprofit is. And again, these buildings are designed to be fairly unobtrusive. I can kind of skip through this a little bit. This is kind of a layout of owned by the Wellness Center, those 5 buildings essentially. And then these 4 buildings are going to be owned by the LLC. I think it's 54,000 square foot footprint there and a 56,000 square foot footprint there. So there's been impressions people have is that it's a giant office park and a tiny wellness center, but it's pretty much the same size. And the wellness center is, it has a number of amenities. It has a swimming pool and a movie theater and some things, basketball court, gym. But if you take all of the amenities and the hallways, it's still about, it's about 1,000 square foot per unit, and ultimately that breaks down to about 450 feet average for the apartment. So it's a fairly small apartment complex, and it's the same size roughly as the office building. And Camille showed these. One of the things that it shows 38 feet. The buildings from grade are 33 feet maximum, and the housing units are 23, 22 feet, which aren't that high. I live in a house that's 31 feet tall, but they measure from existing grade to the top of the roof. And building 3, one of the reasons the Coastal Commission request was the safety ordinance wants inundation no greater than 6 feet below the maximum, what they call level. So it held the grade at 22. So there's a little sag. The lowest part of the site where we intersect the building is 17, I think. So that's why we have that 5-foot difference. The majority of the site is only about a foot below, so we only fill about a foot. So we have one building that we're filling about 5 on a corner, but it's not we have a pretty minimal fill. The main fill is associated with our infiltration system. We have no storm drains. And I've got a number of buildings in here that are typical Camille showed these. We have a fairly low visual impact. And I did want to kind of go back real quick. I'm jumping around here. But this building here, these are the heights of the Wellness Center. That's a 33-foot tall building. My little pointer's not working. 33-foot tall building. And these are, as what was approved on the drawings with the parapets, I think they're close to 51. But the scale is, we're taking this height building and putting on this site and eliminating the taller buildings that were previously approved. So the process is a reduction of what was approved is the main issue here. And let me kind of move on. Again, kind of low impact. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the landscaping. This scenario was, there inside the parking lot, our botanist basically identified California sycamores. And it's not exactly a native tree, but the way it's shown visually is they bring the sycamores all the way out into this strip. This strip here is on the landscape plan is a riparian forest, which is what you see out there now, primarily alders and willows. So it is going to be a more undulating front. The parking lot trees will be tall, but ultimately the building's going to be shielded from view, but look like it's a more natural setting. It doesn't look particularly natural in this location. And I was going to I keep promising Lisa to work a little bit more in the plants, and I will do that. Buildings like, the reason I know this one's 33 foot tall is that I'm designing the elevator for it. But a typical commercial building is about what we're looking at. Most likely our buildings will be 2. We're allowing up to 3 feet, 3 stories, but number of buildings in Half Moon Bay, that's a lot taller and much larger than us. That's in Princeton. That's senior housing. The old building is closer to what our office buildings would be. The new building's substantially higher. A building other in Half Moon Bay that's higher. Fire department's the same size as the Wellness Center building. Moon Ridge is similar to what we're looking at in terms of height. That's a little taller than what we're talking about. These buildings are close to what we're looking at in terms of Wellness Center buildings. We're a little lower on some, but I think the corner of that roof is close to 30, and we're maybe a little bit higher. So our attempt on the latest is to keep it somewhat similar to what's in the, that's again, we're lower than those buildings there in Princeton. And again, we're keeping quite a bit of farming, and we are planning on farming this site if it's not developed or when it's developed. So the phasing allows essentially continued farming. It may never be developed for all I know, for most of it, but we are going to develop the Wellness Center. I did want to, we're a lot higher than any of the buildings that are being approved now for tsunami. Our elevation floor slab is safe. I felt a little nervous on the other side. This side we're very high. We're 6 feet above FEMA evacuation level, so we don't have to technically evacuate. We're 25, pardon me?
Are you going to be much longer? Because we're eating into time for public.
Yeah, and let me just, I'll just round it up. Quickly on, Leonard brought up the water, 9,700 gallons versus 26. 26, I made both estimates. 26 was using no low flush toilets, nothing, because we were planning on recycling anything. That number is the one that's been approved by Montero Water and Sanitary District. But ultimately, GSD and Montero will be the ones that approve a flow level. That's just my estimate. And I think it's reasonable. But it's still, Montero reviewed it on their engineering level and felt that was adequate. GSD, I don't think, has done that yet. But at some point, when we actually get building permits, one of the things that's changed is that hooked to Montero, we actually have an actual flow. It's a metered flow. Before, the problem that GSD had was they really didn't know. But now they can adjust to whatever building permits based on actual flow from Montero. And thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Wrap it up.
Okay, I have an addendum presentation from the MCC. Just a few items that weren't covered that I think people should know about. The Big Wave project presented at the 2006 pre-development workshop had 4 two-story office buildings totaling 155,000 square feet and a wellness center consisting of 36 1- and 2-story apartment and condominium housing units for an unspecified number of residents plus associated common areas and commercial uses. The 2006 development density was presented as fully supporting all project goals. Although the community expressed a concern in 2006 at the large scale of development, the North Parcel Office Park was subsequently increased to 3 stories and 225,000 square feet, and a separate 20,000 square foot commercial building was added to the South Parcel. That brought the total 2010 Big Wave project commercial space from 155,000 to 245,000 square feet. The 2010 Big Wave EIR was broadly disputed, but the county certified it. The fact that the Coastal Commission determined that the project raised substantial issue with the county's LCP and denied the project seems not to affect the 2010 EIR approval, and by extension, the apparently pre-approved addendum for the North Parcel alternative. The county's EIR has never considered the original 155,000 square foot business park in its analysis of the preferred project alternative, even though it fulfilled all project goals. And in the interim, since the first project was set aside and now we have this, the Midcoast Local Coastal Program has been updated, and there's some new policies here, and I was going to I'll just leave this, I'll cover one. LCP Policy 2.52 on traffic mitigation. For this size project, the LCP requires the applicant to develop and implement a traffic impact analysis and mitigation plan. The traffic analysis has determined the project will have a significant impact on Cypress Highway 1 intersection, and per county requirements, mitigation measures, a signal or a roundabout, should be installed as part of the project prior to occupancy. However, mitigation measure Trans 1 does not require even beginning the lengthy process of design, permitting, and construction until after building occupancy and further traffic analysis. Once the signal warrant is triggered in Cypress, which we learn is practically on the brink, mitigation implementation could take years, during which there will be significant traffic impacts. And we've just been going over the pedestrian crossing and realizing how something that simple, how long that takes. And one other comment about the Wellness Center square footage. The 4 Wellness Center buildings are listed as having a total of 70,500 square feet of building floor area. Buildings 2 and 3 have residential second floor and unfinished ground floors of as yet undetermined use, pool, storage, or could be anything except living space. Clearly, these floors are intended to be finished and used, and yet their square footage, 19,500 square feet, is not counted in the building totals, which would be 90,000 square feet with those 2 floors included, so that makes the project look like it has been reduced, but those floors are there and they will be used. Okay, so I just jumped in and said all that out of line, but basically this is the time when the council can ask any questions, and then we will have the public. Laura?
Going along with the issue of traffic, so as has been stated, the existing conditions at the intersection of Cypress and Highway 1, they don't meet the requirements apparently, which would trigger the installation of a traffic signal. Even though the peak hour weekday level of service is noted as E in the AM and F in the PM, as well as on weekend peak midday. So the question is this, what is the signal warrant requirement for the intersection of Cypress and Highway 1? Is it based on the level of service, or is it based on the actual number of vehicles? In which case, how many would that be?
Oh, do you want to answer on that? It's Caltrans calculation. I'm not exactly familiar with what it is, but I know it's close to what it's out there now. And it's, my guess is anything other than one of the 10-unit buildings for the Wellness Center is going to trigger it. And that means that installation has to occur as part of the building permit of that project.
But what I'm asking though, however, is what is it based on? Is it based on?
It's based on an actual measurement estimated by Caltrans.
Right, but we need something a little more specific.
Yeah,
When did we get
I
that?
think we can, I'm making note of your comment and
Okay.
I'll respond to it after consulting with Hexagon.
Oh, okay, great. Alrighty, next issue is the North Parcel alternative development density. On the North Parcel is relatively unchanged from what took place in 2010 when it was denied by the Coastal Commission. The most important benefit from that alternative is going to be dependent on the protection of the southern parcel from future development and restoration of the wetlands. So the project description states, and I quote, the south parcel, it's hard to say, the south parcel's lot 2 would remain undeveloped. My concern is that with an adoption of an ordinance approving a development agreement, which is allowing phasing of this project over 15 years, we have all here on the coast been involved in projects of that length, and things are forgotten. So is there any force of law behind this statement? So what recourse legally would the community have to ensure that this promise is adhered to, and what happens if it's not? So you're just going to take these and then you'll answer? Oh, okay. So I'm just going to provide you with the questions?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. That takes me to one more traffic impact question. So the project estimates makes the assumption that 50 big wave residents would not generate any car trips and therefore are not going to have any effect whatsoever on the current traffic situation. And my understanding is those figures are not included in the study.
Oh, can I address that real quickly?
No, I want to finish what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay. The bottom line is when you're dealing with the disabled, your goal is to lead these people, to teach these people to lead an independent life, which means that they're going to have to learn how to go in the grocery store appropriately, depending on their level of skill. And so here we are without any public transportation, which means that they're going to have friends come, staff members. It's going to be more cars on the road transporting them, as well as I'm assuming they would have visitors. So, the question is, how will these additional figures be factored into the traffic report?
Okay, they do have a significant generation of traffic.
Camille was
Oh, that was
gonna answer the
question.
Yeah, she's going
Okay,
to
I
answer.
thought you want me, okay.
Okay. Moving on to the fire flow storage tank, that 200,000 gallon tank on the ground floor of Building 3. If you could identify if that's going to be for fire protection, swimming, exactly what it's going to be used for, and where is the water going to come from? So it's noted in the EIR that MWSD is going to be providing it. Then on page 4, a different page in the EIR, it says it's going to be coming from an agricultural well. So determining where that water comes from would be useful. And the other issue is what is going to be the impact of having a heated pool, and I'm assuming that it's going to be purposefully limiting the ventilation to prevent evaporation and conserve water. What's the effect of having this heated pool underneath the living quarters, which is going to allow for, in my limited engineering knowledge, constant moisture to permeate the building? I have a couple more if everybody's patient. I'll let the chair tell me when to stop. Okay.
Just to be curious, can we answer some of those questions, or do you want to
No,
know?
Camille said she'd rather wait till didn't you?
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
group all
Yeah, Camille's got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, water use. I'm confused by the daily flow analysis, which is assuming that water use is confined to just the bathroom in the business park. One would assume that there's going to be water needed for industrial purposes, for your lunchrooms, etc. Now, the big wave maintenance laundry services, which are to be provided for the office park and wellness center, seem like eventually, over time, are going to use large amounts of water that don't appear to be included in the study. And this one is kind of crazy to me. You'll have to help me understand. It says that the proposed no chlorine saltwater pool is said to eliminate the need for showers. If you've ever had salt water on your skin, you want to wash off. So it's saying that, won't people want to wash off with salt water? I don't believe you can save water by asking them not to wash off after they come out of the pool. And then the second piece of that is, let us hope that they're showering before they get in the pool. Some sort of way to shower off. So, that is a use of water that it seems to me should be included. And now I'm quickly changing gears and going to the grading plan. So it's going to call for raising the grade level of the developed site 1 to 2 feet with imported gravel. What isn't defined is how that landscaped area within the developed site is going to be brought up to the new grade level. So if we could have an explanation of that. Moving on to parking, and never fear, I'm almost running out of paper. Can you identify for us which section of the north parcel parking is planned for the public beach spaces? That's certainly been an issue here on the coast. Are there plans to ensure somehow that these beach access parking spots are going to be marked? Are they going to be prioritized in terms of placement so that the public has easy access to the beach? And then we'll move on to the big wave business operation. The transportation is supposed to provide for the collection of fees for parking during special events. So for example, they're Green Machines or Mavericks. What is going to prevent those public beach parking spaces from incurring parking fees if they're going to be those particular spaces? In addition, the parking spaces alongside building 2, 3, 4, and 6 do not show any road access. It is not clear if there's going to be sufficient space or if there is space currently for landscaping. So the question is, what is the plan for that area?
Sorry, which area?
It's between, so that they show that there's parking spaces alongside the buildings, 2, 3, 4, and 6, and but there's no road access.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Okay, so, and then just an inconsistency that I'm noting in the EIR, it shows that Big Wave farming products would be used on site or sold to the office park employees only, but Big Wave Transportation will transport the food and produce to market. So something's amiss there. One other question I have is I think it would be important for people to understand the impacts of a 15-year development agreement and also how it was determined, because that's a very long time for a development agreement, how it was determined that this would be agreed to for this project, or an ordinance put in place. And there was one more item, but that's all I can think of right now. Okay, I'm through.
Do you want us to continue and you compile your questions, or did you have some quick answers, or we're at
Well, I wanted to also
8:36.
offer the option of a MCC letter that perhaps combines all of your comments and can be provided to staff before September 2nd. And then we can sort of make sure not to miss any detail. And then it's really from the MCC versus
When would you need
all
that?
individuals. You know, it's just a courtesy period. I mean, we can comment at any time, but ideally before September 2nd, so we can provide sort of thorough.
Can it wait till 2 weeks? Do we have another meeting?
Yeah.
All right, well, so Dan, you want to have a turn?
Yes, thank you. So as everybody knows, the traffic in this area is getting from bad to much worse. And I'm very interested on the traffic study that was recently done. Is that all public record right now in its basic form?
It's complete.
Completely in
Right here.
this document.
It's completely, I mean, it takes up half the document.
Some bedtime reading.
How many pages is that book?
A lot.
An inch is, I mean,
Right.
3/4 inch is all traffic.
Right, so traffic is really I think one of the biggest issues. And so I'll look for it in here, and I hopefully it's summarized, but what I'm looking for is the most basic data
It's all
in
there.
its basic form.
Anything else, Dan?
Yeah, it just seems like that there's a lot of wiggle room with the use permits and history of low-level enforcements, and I'm just wondering, I hear a lot of promises tonight, how can we expect that this stuff will be enforced in the future when it's not enforced today? So that's a important question.
Anything else, Dan?
I'm just looking at my notes here. The logos. I'd like to ask, where is it precedented that there's logos on the side of buildings in a semi-rural area? And how important are those? Because I
I
really,
have to say that county staff put that on there only because there's no signage plan that was proposed.
so not at the applicant's request, the county went ahead and put that on there
Well,
without.
I'd have to imagine that these businesses would need signage. Not only that, but I wanted the design review committee to have sort of a realistic view of these buildings, okay? So, and not only that, but the design review officer and myself felt that it would break up the stucco panel a little bit better. But, so that's where it came from.
So that'll be taken up at design review?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not being taken up by design review because there are no specifics around the signage. So
There's a
whatever
placement of a logo, depending on the tenant, it's gonna look different, everyone has a different logo. But
Don't
generally,
like
the size, the placement, it's a prototype.
We can, okay, we can add that to our letter.
I don't think there's any precedent of that, so that would be the first.
Yeah, we didn't plan on it, so.
We can add that to our letter.
So,
Dan, do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I'm waiting. So, you know, the scale, some of these photos, some of these diagrams that are on the board, you know, they just, I am skeptical that they're accurate. And so I'm asking, you know, would there be story poles with, you know, verifiable heights, so that we can really get a idea of what you're proposing and the visual impacts from all angles.
I can answer that right now. The visual impacts are presented at the viewpoints, the 5 viewpoints presented on my slide. As far as story poles, based on experience the last time, they did not provide much information. It was like a farm of poles. All you did was you looked straight through the poles. It did not provide an accurate idea of the massing of the buildings. Not only that, but they were battered by the wind.
Okay, I'll make it,
completely inaccurate.
let me make it easy. How can we verify that that's actually to scale?
Well, I can tell you how they did it. Wasn't the one that did it, but the guy took a,
The methodology is written up and included in the addendum. So when you get a chance, review it. If the methodology seems flawed, you know, write something to the county and we can respond.
I have to say, it's 8:42, and if we want a chance for the public to speak, we need to move right along, okay?
And that's it.
Okay, Dave?
Okay, I just have a couple of really quick things that were pretty much already covered, but I'll go into them. MWSD generally figures 60 gallons per day per resident in a house, so it's really hard to see how 50 residents and 20 staff and a bunch of people using the building bathrooms are going to be at 10,000 gallons per day at build out.
we're at 44 because we don't have a kitchen.
Yeah, so, the other thing about the not building on the parts that are not supposed to be built, I would hope that the county would require a conservation easement to be attached to the deeds to prevent further development of these parcels as a part of the process. And finally, it's really hard to believe that all traffic from this development would go out at Cypress and Highway 1 and none of it at Capistrano and Highway 1. Anybody going south is almost certainly going to go through Princeton.
It's split up pretty much 50-50, but even so, it triggers the signal warrant at Cypress.
No, that's not my concern. My concern is the statement, no additional delays at Highway 1 and Capistrano. As somebody who goes across that quite a few times.
If you look at the traffic counts, you'll see that the existing condition of traffic going through Princeton is much greater than the existing at Cypress. And so, whereas at Cypress, you're adding more than twice as, you're increasing it by more than what's already there. In Princeton, you're not. You're only adding maybe 30% or something because
that
there's
was my concern. That did not seem reasonable to me, knowing what the traffic is like now and the number of people that plan to be here. So I have not seen the methodology traffic study. I'll tell you that.
Chris?
So picking up on the traffic again, Scott, I'm confused, and I read all these documents, I looked at the addendum, I went through all, I didn't look at every piece of the data, but I looked through all that, and I'm confused because in the final EIR, it clearly states that the traffic studies show that it's much faster to go out from Big Wave out to Cypress. 2 minutes faster is what the FEIR said. But Scott, you told us in November of 2013, adamantly told us that all traffic flow was going to go out Prospect to Capistrano that way. You told us that several times. We asked you about that. You told us that for sure. We said, geez, that doesn't seem right. And you told us that for sure. And now we're back to discussing Cypress again. So I feel like,
just a tiny bit.
well, hold on a minute, Scott. I'm really unhappy with this because for at least the last 6 months, even going back to 2009, the Midcoast has been bashing its brains out trying to figure out safe highway crossings and other transportation and congestion management issues, including a main point of that is the intersection at Cypress and 1. And I haven't seen Big Wave representatives at these meetings. I haven't heard any integration of the Big Wave plan with that. nor any discussion that Big Wave's gonna pay for this or anything, and I'm really upset about this. I mean, that.
There's no need to get emotional, honestly, because it's not, it shouldn't be personally directed at Scott.
No, I'm not getting upset at Scott. I'm not getting upset at anybody. I'm just saying
I
that.
have to say,
Yes.
that the background is to clarify it
Yes.
quickly, is that originally he had suggested driveways that only go left.
Yeah.
Sorry. No,
Yeah.
right.
So-
That only go right. So that all project going north would have to go through Princeton up to through North Capistrano, okay? And that was rejected by the county and Hexagon as a traffic hazard because they said that you can't force people to do what they don't want to do, and they will make illegal U-turns on Airport Street, okay? So he tried, that was the proposal, and we made him change the driveways to be multi-directional, okay? So.
Right,
hopefully that
but
clarifies it.
again, I come back to my point here was that the community is pulling its hair out, trying to figure out what to do about some intersections, specifically Cypress and 1, and that should be, Big Wave should be represented there, they should be participating in that discussion, because apparently they're gonna end up, a suggestion for a signal there, which the community is not happy about, a roundabout, which the community is split on, and we're spending all this time discussing these other possibilities when it looks like we really should be discussing these two only and having Big Wave there talking about how much they're going to pay for this when none of that was discussed at any of these meetings that Big Wave's going to pay for part of this. We're all trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it, where we're going to get the grants, and how much time and study is going to be involved with this. And this is partially Big Wave's responsibility, and I have not seen them there or heard any input from them on this. And if I was a member of this community that spent all this time at these meetings, which I have, I would be upset.
Midcoast mobility meetings? Are those
The Highway 1 safety and,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
Okay, well, he's been formally invited.
Okay.
My understanding is we're gonna pay for it, but that's, Camille.
But pay for what? And we're already finding out that we're 2 years out from getting painted lines on the road. So when is this gonna happen?
It's, it happens when when we get a building permit, we're not gonna do it before.
Right, so
Hold
we're
on.
10 years out from anything
Hold-
happening in Cypress.
Hold on, please.
Okay, the last point, I have many issues with the traffic. I just think it's a total shell game. It does not reflect reality in any way, and I don't care what the studies say. The traffic, this is gonna make traffic worse, and it's an actual concrete impact that this is gonna have on the community. And like I said, we're spending all this time trying to work out just a couple of safe crossings of the highway, and this is gonna add 1,400 more trips a day on Airport Road. I mean, okay, so the traffic. But the one other question I have for you, just to pare it down, is, Scott, you said that, if we can't, we're gonna build these office buildings as needed. But if there's no need, we'll have to find other sources for revenue to help supplement the wellness center.
Grants.
What would those be? Because my concern is those would be developing the south parcel.
Well, we have two options. One thing on the traffic, the reason it shows what it shows is that our primary direction of traffic is opposite what the current flow is. So that's why things aren't extreme at Capistrano and Highway 1. People are coming into a place of work while people are going over the hill. So we're using the untraveled side of the road. So that's why it doesn't show big impacts. The county has decided to kind of allow a third of the traffic going north in Capistrano and 2/3 of it going north into Cypress, 2/3 of it going to Capistrano. So those impacts are addressed by when they occur. If we're off-peak or opposite peak, they're somewhat different. My understanding of the mitigations is that when we cause an impact, we're going to pay for that intersection. If it's paid for before us, then we'll pay for something else because we're at least going to be hit up by the traffic mitigation plan somewhere. Let's see what else.
Other sources of
Oh, yeah,
revenue.
grants. Well, we have two options.
Things out of order here, maybe we could finish. and-
Well, grants, we either lose our low-income housing, or we get grants, or we have some subsidy from the development.
All right,
That's
Scott,
what it amounts to.
hold on. The meeting has been way lopsided with you guys
Okay.
talking. We need to quickly finish. Joel, Joel?
I know I'll save some time for the.
All right, Aaron?
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to just cut to my questions really quickly. So the first thing is I made some notes, and I hope I got this down correctly. The first phase, which was between 0 and 5 years, wellness center boat, boat parking, boat storage,
Yeah.
and coastal access. So at any rate, how much impact are you seeing from the parking? I mean, in other words, how much are you anticipating are you anticipating more people coming in with boats and parking them here than we already have? Or are you anticipating people moving their boats from where they're already parked and parking them there instead? So I'm just wondering about the increase in the use by boat owners who could potentially be new boat owners that are coming in to park there. The second thing is in terms of traffic, I was also wondering, and I haven't looked at it, but I will, but the impact of the construction vehicles. This is a really long project, so were construction vehicles taken into consideration? I mean, obviously that's going to be hugely impactful in a 15-year project. The next thing is Montero Water and Sanitary District. I just wanted to find out, are they only agreeing to provide X amount of gallons to you? What happens if you go over? So that's another question that I would have. And lastly, how do you determine the individuals who are actually going to be, granted the units there? For example, I have a very good friend whose sister is developmentally disabled. She goes to work and ends up with a boyfriend, and they get married. So now are those units just for single individuals only, or do they have the opportunity to have people come live with them? That could theoretically change the number of individuals living in a unit from 50 or whatever to an additional number. And that's it. Thank you.
Would you like that answered now?
No. I think we're putting everything together.
Yeah, so I'd like to finally get to you guys. We're not going to do speaker slips. If you want to just come up to the microphone and make your comments or...
Could you please provide your name and town?
And your town, yeah.
Leonard Moreno, Granada. I'm not at all clear on where you're measuring building heights from. Is it the built-up grade after the fill or the current natural grade? I'd like to see the computation of the required parking for the various uses as spelled out in the zoning ordinance book, where it says for this use you need this many parking spaces. I'd like to see the worksheet for that. And in particular, what happens if it initially gets built out with uses that require the low end of parking, and then the tenants change, and now you have a mix of tenants? The county has no control over it once the buildings are built, and so you could have the buildings approved with low parking requirement tenants, and then it changes later, and now there's insufficient parking. And I think that there needs to be some sort of condition put on it that the landscaping can never be allowed to grow higher than the buildings. And one of the things I don't understand that really needs clarification is what you said, Camille, doesn't agree with the slides you showed, because you said that the view of the bluff top, you didn't use the word bluff top, but people here call it the bluff. You said it won't be obscured by the buildings, and yet you showed slides showing that the bluff is hidden by the buildings from Highway 1. And I just want to make one comment. Development agreements always screw the public in favor of the developer. I've been following development agreements for longer than I've lived here, which is 20 years now. The traffic impacts, I think it was, now I forgot, one of the council members mentioned construction equipment. The big construction trucks eat up as much road capacity as 10 cars because they go slow, and it's just a mess. So that has to be factored into the capacity analysis, is the ridiculous amount of road capacity taken up by construction trucks. I have real big problems with the whole thing of the ALUCP, because the county has been intentionally dragging their feet for close to 15 years now on getting that updated. The FAA issues new safety regs every 3 years. The county is now 5 cycles behind because they have stalled on this. They have stonewalled the community in adopting updated FAA regs to try and get this project approved first. And so now they're going to do some sleight of hand and try and still use the 1996 rules when they should be using the current ones, which are at the most 3 years old. I don't know the exact cycles. I could go compute it, 96, 99, 2002, whatever, and you can figure out what cycle it is. So there's something really squirrely there that needs to be dealt with.
Hi, Sabrina Brennan, Moss Beach, Seal Cove. So I'm opposed to the 15-year development agreement, and I'd like to get more information about how that was arrived at. And I'd also like to point out that the delay in development of the Oceana Hotel and the Harbor Village Shopping Center resulted in a project that was built and is extremely outdated in appearance because it wasn't redesigned after it was originally designed and then put on the shelf for many, many years. And that project has been overall very unsuccessful, and I think part of the reason is because of the delay in development. So for those reasons and others, I just think having a 15-year development agreement is a really bad idea. And I'd like to know who's responsible for coming up with that. I strongly support story polls. I think they were very helpful last time, and I think there's absolutely no excuse for not having story polls this time. And we need to have an adequate amount of time to see them up. So the sooner the better. And they should be done properly and safely. And I like the idea of a conservation easement that was mentioned by Dave earlier. I don't know that much about how they work, but it sounds like a good idea, because how do we know what will happen with this supposed undeveloped farmland? I'd like some assurances that it isn't going to get developed later. We've already lost so much agricultural land in this county. It's shameful. As far as the parking goes, some of the points that were made earlier about parking becoming insufficient do concern me, and we don't know what's going to happen with the development. There could be a parking problem. Clearly at Pillar Ridge, there's insufficient parking. There's so many cars here that people are overflowing onto Airport and creating an unsafe situation for anybody who's a pedestrian or a bicyclist. So I think that needs to be thought out well, and I think that there should be planning for bike pedestrian safety in this plan. So where the property is located, there should be a bicycle pedestrian trail incorporated into the plan that frontages Airport. And there's really no excuse for not doing that, considering that we've had people die that were walking along Airport. So I'm just surprised. Maybe that's already in there, but
it's in the plan.
Okay, so I think that's really important. Signage, there should be a signage plan, one that we can all look at. We need to be able to really go through that, and the design review committee needs to be able to look at something that isn't just on the fly. It needs to be a very specific plan about what the signage is going to look like, where it's going to be located, all those kinds of things. The traffic at Cypress, I still have a lot of questions about that, but I'll wait and get to those later. I think the MCC can help me with that. I've heard that the landowner, one of the landowners at least, is planning to sell the land as soon as the project is approved, if it's approved. If that's the case and the land is sold, how does that affect the project? Does the project go away? Does the land, the people buying the land, do they get to then take up the cause to build out the project? How does that work? So a new owner can still build the project?
They're subject to all the conditions of approval, they're subject to the same exact project description, the same funding mechanisms.
That's what happened with Harbor Village, all that approval and the development thing and the long wait, then it was sold and someone else developed it.
Well, it
They
just
amend the permits.
it just doesn't give the public much faith that this project is for real, especially when the landowner's running around town talking about selling the land. So if that's the case, then it looks like a scheme to jack up the value of the land, and it's going to hurt the community. And that's not fair, you know? That shouldn't be allowed. The tsunami risk, I still have a lot of concerns about that, just because people are not going to be sleeping on the first floor of some of these buildings, whatever the case may be. There's still issues with how are they going to evacuate? You know, I mean, clearly we have some serious traffic problems and they're getting worse. Like ever since the tunnels were opened, the traffic out here has gotten way worse. I don't understand how the evacuation is going to work, and I'm concerned about how people in this neighborhood are going to evacuate with this additional traffic. I'm concerned about how people in my neighborhood in Seal Cove are going to evacuate. And how are we all going to evacuate on Highway 1? I mean, there's been serious criticism about the lack of evacuation planning for the entire coast side. And now we want to add even more residential and business, and then on top of that have people with significant disabilities who are going to need help evacuating. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I think there needs to be a complete reevaluation of evacuation on the coast side. And I'm not sure, you know, I haven't read Hexagon's report yet, but I'd like to know that they are specifically looking at traffic in relation to evacuating in the event of a major storm surge or tsunami. And then, I'm almost done. I just want to reemphasize story poles, please. Thank you.
Just want to make a comment. You're supposed to evacuate from a tsunami on foot.
Run.
That's the rule. Elizabeth?
On the story pole.
Amy, and I just follow up on traffic concerns which are shared. Why do this? We have a perfectly good zoning which would avoid all this. It's meant to serve the harbor and meant to provide a service for the community and the harbor community, and those two parcels were zoned for it. Why we have to put up with an unspecified use permit? If it's a wellness center and one by one office buildings, why it needs a major subdivision? I mean, it's all points in the direction that someone wants to flip over and make profit, and we all suffer. Going back to the use permit and the zoning, and the water usage, I'm not sure if any water was already promised by, not just promised, but actually allocated, because that's the major issue. We have an LCP with a housing element. The housing element clearly specifies how much water usage the community can afford and provide. It has two building sites. Again, going back to the same idea that the zoning and the land use goes with the property of the people who own it. If those are built, we already can provide water for it. Now, we are suddenly promising, or who is promising water for a third project, which is not included in our housing element? I don't know where this came from. There are two housing sites, perfectly good for traffic. There is bus service, there is a hospital, everything which the wellness center may need. Doesn't affect the traffic. No one explored it, no one looked into it. We can have grants, we can pay for traffic lights, we can pay for lawyers, environmental reports, but we can't really look into how we can build an existing housing site which already allocated services for that purpose. And why can't we keep the zoning what we have now for the purpose the community needs it, and the harbor needs it, and even the visitor needs it? Why we are running around all these problems this project will create instead of keeping our zoning or demand that actually they do a zoning change. and then prove it that the zoning is needed. To give an unspecified use permit for 15 years, I don't know what comes out of it. It's absolutely outrageous. Okay, that's all.
Good evening, I'm Fran Pollard, El Granada, and I'd like to know why we only have 2 weeks to comment. I think that should be extended. It should be at least 60 days for a project like this. It's been going on for years anyway. What difference in another couple of months? We've got, I counted 8 different plans going on in this vicinity right now that we're going to be involved in that affect all of us around here. And this is like adding, we have little communities here, little coastal communities. This is like adding another city in this little area here. So I'd like this extended. You just presented this to the Planning Commission this morning, so it should be at least 30 days from today, or 60 days at least. That's what I'm saying.
Fran, the decision at the Planning Commission isn't planned until the end of October. So we got all that time to comment.
No, the deadline is September 2nd.
No, you can comment all the way up to October 22nd.
But
We
what-
simply request that you provide comments prior to September, or by September 2nd, in order for the county to provide a comprehensive response.
Yeah,
So you're free to provide comments at any time. And not only that, but it's a 30-day comment period that started on July 31st.
Anybody else?
One last little thing.
Is there anybody else besides Leonard? Scott?
I'm kind of speaking as a resident of Pillow Ridge here. It seems like this project will impact us the most here. Dorothy Norris, Dot Norris. I was wondering, and most of my questions are directed towards the water situation. You mentioned that Montera Water will be providing the water, but then you also mentioned that there was going to be a tap that comes from the water plant here. Is that correct? So that the water will be coming from this plant to the project?
No.
Is that, do I have that mixed up?
Yeah.
Okay, but the water will be coming from this water table, right?
Yes.
Probably, maybe not, actually. It's currently coming from, it'd be coming from the hydrant, but they're using another water table.
Yes, or maybe,
Well,
you know.
Just to
Currently, no.
clarify, Scott, the water table here, your ag well,
Yeah, we'll still
Pillar
use
Ridge
that.
wells, and the airport wells, all the same aquifer.
Yeah, except, theoretically. they-
Montera's taking over the Pillar Ridge wells at the end of this month. They'll be part of their system. So, and then there's the airport wells, and I don't know how they mix it, but you're not going to get pure Alta Vista water.
Right,
It's
I agree.
yeah.
I'm just wondering about the effect of infusion of salt water into the water table here and the possibility of subsidence. What would be the impact of our little community here on that? And this concerns me as a resident here.
Thanks, Dot. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Gail.
Hi, my name is Gail Erickson. I live in El Granada. And I have a question. Obviously, a lot of people had comments and questions about traffic. And I'd like to add something. You mentioned a company, I guess, that's either consultants, Hexagon Traffic. I would recommend, and if the MCC could do this or something like that, that we maybe have another meeting or something where somebody from Hexagon could come. I would like to know what other types of traffic planning have they done in the area that we would know about? Can you give us examples of what do we know about Hexagon? I mean, this is the big thing, and I don't know how often do they come here or...
They're very expensive. We've only, the scope of the project only includes one visit to a meeting from Hexagon, and that is to the Planning Commission on October 22nd. But if, I have some idea of your comments here, but if you have any more detailed questions regarding Hexagon, I can shoot them an email with all of these questions, and they can answer sort of in
Well, I guess
detail
They do almost
to
all the
questions.
traffic work
But
for.
they're paid consultants, and that would require paying
San
to
Mateo.
attend for
correct. My question is, what other work have they done?
Yeah, they actually work for most of the cities in San Mateo. When I was public works director.
Most of the cities?
Pardon me?
Most, but is there anything they've done in more unincorporated areas like this?
Yeah,
That would
they
be
have a pretty
great.
good reference.
If you can provide that for us, that would be great.
Bill?
And October 22nd is supposed to be decision-making?
They can continue it, but the staff report will be written for a decision, yes.
Bill Keogh, Moss Beach. Lisa, stop me if this is sort of out of the scope of this, because I'm not fully up to date on this current report. But I noticed it hasn't been mentioned here. I agree with most of the comments that people have been making on traffic. They are concerns. But I, from the very beginning, and I know my friend Merrill Barble is not in the area anymore, but we had a long talk about this. And our concern has always been the fact that you're going to put mentally challenged people who don't have driver's license way away from services. Mm-hmm. And then when you talk about traffic, you say, well, there's not going to be a big impact on traffic. My concern is at 6 o'clock at night, and they don't have a snack, or they need to get a razor blade to shave for work the next morning. They're going to have to hike a couple miles over to the 7-Eleven store.
By the way.
And it's just, the bus service, I've been at how many MCC meetings over the past year? I mean, the bus service on the coast side keeps contracting and contracting, forcing more people to get cars, which forces less ridership, which makes it contract. I don't see that as a positive in the project. And, you know, I'm old. I remember back in upstate New York when I was growing up in Manhattan, when these first programs came up about integrating challenged people into the neighborhoods, into the community, and get them out of institutions where they're kind of locked away. Mainstream, it was called. The only communities that could be put in were warehouse districts or undesirable areas, and the term was given warehousing. And then I just sit here going, I can't believe, like, my life has gone full circle. We're kind of going back to warehousing. And I hate to insult you, Scott. I know personally, I feel sorry for you and the other families that have children, and especially as they get to be adult children and you're getting older and you can't take care of them as well. They do need places, but if those places are in such an area, what happens when you're gone? What happens to the low-income people who don't live close by? How do they get to take their children, out to these kind of stores? I don't see us. I understand that this is what was given to you, and that's sort of the constraints you have to build. And but
it's a nice area.
Let me finish. It's a nice area if you've got a nice support structure, but I don't see that as part of this. I don't want to be a naysayer. I would like to be wrong on this, but my big concern, and I don't hear it being addressed, I don't care, well, I do care if it impacts my traffic, but I can deal with that. I have, full control of my senses, although some people would probably deny that. But anyway, that's something I don't want lost in the shuffle of the other things that we're talking about, is what do we do about that, because I don't think that's been answered.
I agree.
Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Chris Lannon. I live in Moss Beach. I'd like to understand more about why there's an emphasis on the nonprofit part of this project and the for-profit part of this project and the intersection of the land ownership. Are there special allowances or tax deductions, or why are we continually reminded of the nonprofit versus profit part of this model? And I agree with what Sabrina was saying about why, I'm curious to know why planning, I'm curious to know if planning, how much money planning has spent on studies and pushing this project forward, and why we can't recommend to county supervisors or somebody that we do table final decisions on this until all of these other plans have been finished or finalized. There's too many decisions being made around this intersection, around this specific parcel of land to shove this thing through. So that would be my recommendation, to ask them to wait until at least some of these projects have been finalized. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that the county policy is, once an application is deemed complete, those are the requirements always applied for that project. And this was deemed complete by the county in May. And so that locks in the zoning and everything. So all these other plans, plan prints, whatever might happen, are not going to be applied to this project.
What is the Coastal Commission bounces it again?
Well, that's another issue entirely. So anybody else besides Leonard? Paul? I'm going to let, if I have time, I'll let.
Hi, my name is Paul Bowman. I live here in Moss Beach at Pillar Ridge. I was just a little concerned about some of the things you said in your presentation, coming from the county side. You were talking about the tsunami safety zone requirements for construction in a tsunami zone. I'm concerned that there's going to be wellness planning center or wellness center for people who might have special needs placed in such an area where there is a flood zone and a risk of floods or tsunami floods. And you spoke about how there's a required height for buildings in a tsunami zone, somewhere around 28 feet, and yet foundation level and inundation level is 28 feet.
Yeah, but the residential elevation is 34.
34.
And then the residential buildings are going to be only 22 feet
34.
high. So that's going to be well below the inundation levels.
The floor level is 34 feet. The requirement is 22 feet, so we're 12 feet above.
Okay. And then is the construction going to be concrete on those lower levels, and then
Steel
natural
and concrete,
steel and concrete on there? Okay, that's where I was a little confused there. That was one of my concerns. I echo the concerns everybody else has voiced as well as about traffic. I'm also a little bit worried about the water supply. I'm not sure if you guys were able to verify with Montera that they'd be able to pick up your capacity. I know that Montera's capacity right now is stretched pretty thin. They're taking over our water system here is not going to give them any added capacity. It's just going to maintain what's already existing. My last comment and question is I'm concerned about the viewscapes that you portrayed as viewed from Highway 1. It appeared to me, based on the photographs you showed, that you're using wide-angle lenses, which give a perspective of making the buildings look a lot smaller than they will actually appear in reality. So that concerns me a lot. It doesn't seem very realistic. Also, another perspective from taking a view from the bluffs, looking down on the buildings. Of course, if you look from an elevated height, the buildings aren't going to block your view. But these, the wellness center and the wellness housing units, according to the plan, it looks like they're going to be placed very close in proximity to a large portion of our community here at Pillar Ridge and very close to the property line. And it appears to me that those buildings with their height are going to significantly impact the views of probably at least maybe a third of the houses here. I'm just guessing, but it looks like it'd be a pretty severe impact as far as view perspectives for well up to at least 80 families and homes here. That's pretty significant in my opinion. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Paul, what was your last name, Paul?
Oh, Paul Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Has anybody that hasn't spoken want to get up? Leonard, I'll give you 30 seconds, okay?
Timer is up.
I don't remember when it was, early this year, late last year, something. Jim Eggemeyer, the then planning director, was absolutely adamant that this had to be a new application. So I want to know what happened with that, because if this is a new application for a new project, you can't recycle an old, obsolete, inappropriate, inapplicable EIR.
It is a brand new application, and the
Please
EIR
explain how you
remains-
can use the same EIR when the EIR that was done was for a different project because it's a different application.
it's allowed under sequence.
30 seconds.
Second, for me. I'm just wondering the process.
We won't.
Listening to concerns, planning commission, not to be able to resolve, because we do this for years, and we're getting back the same thing again and again, and you can't just push us to completion. So how you incorporate these things to
I was asking Lisa whether this was taped. It is. We can review the comments in more detail. We do plan, this is part of the comment period, so your comment is being collected during the comment period. And once at the end, we will try our best to group the projects by, the comments by topic and respond to them.
And then what? You respond and we don't think so, and then only continue.
Then the planning commission takes in your comment, our response, staff report, all the project documents, everything that everyone has to say, and makes a decision.
That's not the
30 seconds.
30 seconds, Sabrina.
Really quick. Since this meeting is being videotaped by PCTV and also by Montera Fog, it seems to me that it would be fairly easy, I know I do this, for the county to go back through the video, itemize all the questions that were asked tonight, and then provide a response back to the MCC that the MCC can then, I don't know, present at a future meeting with the responses. We're worn down here. We have got multiple planning efforts going on, many fronts. And it would just be nice if we didn't have to work so hard, given that we have no staff. So if you guys could put that together for us and then get it back to the MCC with responses to all the questions you heard here tonight, I know I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I will close the public comment, and we do kind of need to clear out of the building pretty quick. But I just want to say at the next MCC meeting, whenever it is, should be on the agenda. The first time on the agenda will be the transportation management plan. It's a new thing to hear about. They're calling it Connect the Coast Side. So we're going to have a report on that. And then after that, we will take up Big Wave again. The goal would be for the MCC to approve a comment letter to send in to whatever. And there will be a draft available ahead of time. And so that's the goal. And that will be at our regular meeting place at Granada Sanitary District. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Can I ask one last quick question?
Okay.
Regarding the, first of all, where could you get one of these? And I understand Hexagon is very expensive and they probably won't come out to the MCC meeting to explain how to decipher all these tables. But I think it would be it should be very easy for them to create a video, put it on YouTube, to go through a typical intersection and just column by column explain their methodology, and so that we could, as it was stated earlier, we're inundated with so many projects, so much time. You know, a lot of us don't have the personal time to study this whole.
The county DPW department, we can use that as a resource as well in interpreting and understanding the methodologies of the traffic report without being, without having to pay taxes. So that's also an option to use your DPW.
How would we access that?
Resources. I can give you a contact. It's Diana Shu. Her phone number is 599.
And maybe I can help you with it. I've gone through it with fine-tooth comb.
Okay, and so where would I and the community get one of these?
So there are copies available at the library. It was actually very expensive to reproduce these. I have one extra copy. The copy cost is about over $100 per copy.
He can use mine.
If you want to pay for that,
Other community.
I'm happy to provide you a copy. There's copies at the library. It's all online.
A community member would have to pay $100 for this? Is that
No,
what you-
just they're available. Cost alone.
Pardon?
It's just to cover the printing costs.
Just to
All
be
right, we can
clear,
have this conversation
just to be
after
clear,
the
a community
meeting.
member, if
Meeting
they
is
wanted one,
adjourned.
would have to pay $100 for this?
Or go to the library.
Okay.
We are adjourned.
Or just look at it online. Just digital.
And print out the
Okay, listen.
pages that